Welcome to our second lesson in our geometry unit. This is finding the missing angle. Our essential question is, how can I use angle relationships to find an unknown angle measure? So basically we're going to take what we learned last lesson, our vertical angles, our complementary, our supplementary, and use those relationships to help us find an unknown angle measure. So use your angle relationships to help you set up your equation and find your missing measurement. Here's what we mean by that. Take a look at our first example here. We know that this angle here is 28. We don't know how much this angle measures. It's just described as 2x. But if we use what we know about our angle relationships to realize what is the relationship between those two angles, we can use that to help us find our missing measurement. So here's what that means. Look at these two angles. So I have this angle here, and I have my other one here. What do they make when I look at the outside edges? Well, notice this right here, that right angle symbol. Remember, two angles that form a right angle are complementary angles, meaning they add up to be 90 degrees. That's the whole key to our problem. We know that these two angles add up to be 90 degrees. That's my equation. So you got to show me equation, you got to show me how you solved it each time, but that's the idea of what we're using. We know because they're complementary that we can add them together and they have to equal 90. So then we go ahead and solve our equation. Nice simple two-step equation. Subtract 28 from both sides. I'm left with 2x is equal to 62. Divide both sides by 2, and x is equal to 31. So we found our missing measurement of 31. That's step one. Step two is always to go back to the original problem and write in what is the measure of those angles. Well, we know that this angle is 2x, meaning 2 times x, or 62 degrees, which makes sense. 28 plus 62 gives me my 90 degree angle. So same thing over here. First identify what's the relationship between the angles. So I've got this angle here, and then my 45 degree angle. Well, look at what they make on their outside edges. Notice how together they make a straight line or a straight angle. That means they have to add up to be 180 degrees, meaning they are supplementary. So I know that my 3x plus my 45 has to add it up to be 180. Well, now it's just an equation, so I solve it. First, I undo my adding or subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 45 from both sides and get 3x is equal to 135. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 3 and get x is equal to 45. So I've solved for x. Now take it back up into the original problem and write in the actual measurement for that missing angle. Well, this one was 3x, or 3 times 45, which is 135 degrees. So I've solved for what x is, and I've also solved for what that missing angle is. So let's see a couple more. Take a look at these two here. We've got 43, and we've got x minus 7. But notice on the outside of them, it forms a right angle, meaning they are complementary, meaning they add up to be 90 degrees. So I have x minus 7 plus 43 is equal to 90. I can combine my like terms here. I have a negative 7 and a positive 43. So that leaves me with x plus 36 is equal to 90. Subtract some 36 from both sides. X is equal to 54. So x is equal to 54. So I go back up to the original problem. If x is equal to 54, I want x minus 7. X minus 7 is 47. 54 minus 7 is 47 degrees, which makes sense. 43 plus 47 gives me 90 because they're complementary. Here we've got three angles, but look at what's the relationship between all of them. We have x, 70, and x. But look at what the outside edge of all those angles combine to make. It makes a straight angle, meaning if I add up all three angles, they have to equal 180 degrees. So put my ones in front of my x's if I remember, so that gives me 2x plus 70 equals 180. Yes, you have to show the equation. Yes, you have to show your work and how you solve the equation. So I subtract 70 from both sides, divide by 2, and x is equal to 55. So I go back to my drawing and I write in 55 degrees 55 degrees since they're each equal to x. Next one's a little different. I threw this one in here to make sure we're paying attention. Notice these two angles aren't next to each other. They're not adjacent, so they can't be complementary, they can't be supplementary. They're directly across from each other at the intersection of two lines. Well, if you remember from our other lesson, two angles that are directly across from each other are called vertical angles, and we know that vertical angles are congruent to each other, or in this case, equal to each other. So I know that 72 is equal to x plus 4. So I solve for x, and I know that x is equal to 68. And then because I know they're directly across from each other, I know that this angle here has to be 72, which makes sense. 68 plus 4 is 72. So because they're vertical, I know that they're equal, so I set them equal to each other. Last two. If you think you've got it down, go ahead and do them on your own. If not, follow along with me as I solve them. But remember to start with the relationship. Look at these two. They're directly across from each other. That makes them vertical angles, which means they are equal to each other. So 100 is equal to 2x plus 4. So I solve my equation, subtract 4 from both sides. 2x is equal to 96. Divide both sides by 2. And x is equal to 48. And think about it there for a second. Go back up, fill in my answer here. If this angle is 100, I know that this angle has to be 100 as well, which is 2 times 48 is 96, plus 4 gives me 100. So I would have gotten the same thing either way. Last one. Again, what's the relationship? Well, this angle plus this angle create a straight angle, 180 degrees. So I know that 3x plus 5x minus 20 is equal to 180. Well, I go ahead and do my math. 3x plus 5x is 8x, minus 20 is equal to 180. So I'm going to add 20 to both sides. 8x is equal to 200. Divide both sides by 8, and x is equal to, well, 200 divided by 8 is 25. So I figured out what x is. Last step is to go back to the problem itself and write in the measure of each of those angles. 3x, or 3 times 25, is 75 degrees. Here, 5x, or 5 times 25, is 125, minus 20 is 105. Double check, 75 plus 105 does indeed give me a total of 180, so they are supplementary, and I am good.